Money FM 89.3. Best of breakfast. The bigger picture, only on Money FM 89.3.
Good morning. Thanks for joining us on Money FM 89.3 with me, Ryan Huang. Now, trade wars, tariffs, and shifting supply chains. Asia's investment landscape is being rewritten in real time. So we are breaking down how U.S. trade policy is shaking up Asia's manufacturing hubs, where the next income opportunities are emerging, and what geopolitical flashpoints in Indonesia and Thailand mean for markets. Plus, we look at the sector winners to watch out for the rest of the year. To help us out this morning, we've got Samuel Bentley. He is the Head of Client Portfolio Managers for Eastspring Investments. Sam, thanks for joining us on the show. How are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Great having you on. And it is quite a tough market to read these days. We've got so many things going on. So let's start with what's happening on the tariff front with the U.S. tariffs, the trade tensions. How has that affected Asia? What are the implications to watch out for?
Yeah, well, we've obviously seen we had a year of volatility due to this focus on tariffs and the outcomes of the tariff negotiations. Where we are today, we sort of see about a global average about 18% tariff globally. And in Asia, particularly in the ASEAN region, it averages around a little bit lower than that. Obviously, negotiations ongoing. We've got much bigger tariffs on China and India. And so it is creating instability. We don't know what the next move is. We don't know what the next political sort of whim is of the US administration. So it's challenging. So those Asian businesses finding it more difficult to look through those short-term issues. How do they plan for the next cycle? How do they plan for 6 months? How do they plan for 12 months? So a lot of investment decisions are being held back. A lot of investment decisions are being sort of put on hold. So that is challenging, particularly for sectors like the manufacturing and tech sectors that have been more the focus of some of these tariffs. Now, it's not all countries are created equal, so it is important to think about how companies are being affected, how company opportunities are being impacted. One of the interesting things we saw in the first half of this year was this huge front-loading of trade out of Asia. We saw a 30% increase in the first half of trade activity, exports out of the region. Now, obviously, that's going to come off now in the second half. So we're watching carefully how that might impact companies and sectors going forward from here.
Yeah. So we talk about uncertainties and everything else that would worry an investor. But at the same time, when we look at what's happened on Wall Street, record high every other week, are the markets pricing in or perhaps a bit too much optimism right now?
I think the markets are looking at a couple of things. I think the biggest thing for Asia particularly is the interest rates and interest rate expectations in US dollar. One of the big impacts of this trade environment is a lower inflation, lowering global, but also lowering interest rates in the US. And that has a negative impact on the dollar, and a negative impact on the dollar is great for Asian equities historically. So that dollar influence, that overvaluation of the US, actually having quite a positive, potentially even more positive impact on the opportunity in Asia.
So when you talk about tariffs, that has implications for some of these manufacturing hubs in Asia as well. So would those markets be the ones to, I guess, reduce exposure from, or what would you do in terms of deciding what to allocate in terms of your portfolio?
Yeah, so we have a range at Eastspring. We've got a range of different sort of strategies and approaches to investing in equity markets and fixed income markets. With the income sort of lens on that we're sort of focusing on at the moment, it's actually a great time to be thinking about the sort of high dividend paying stocks. So companies that have got demonstrable strong cash flow generation, paying out dividends, they tend to be more stable through times of volatility.
Right.
That dividend is stable. That dividend helps. So we like the dividend paying sectors. We like the high dividend stocks. But also there are some sectors where, thinking through what we call the dividend journey, there are companies in the early stage of paying dividends. They're generating cash, but they're not necessarily paying them out. They can offer great opportunities. So it's very stock specific for us. We're very active. We're sort of thinking across countries and sectors. But that sort of cash generative business model is we think is very important.
How are you thinking about fixed income versus dividend yielding equities right now? What is that balance that you're looking at right now when you look at how yields are still relatively high, interest rates as well? So how is that approach between fixed income and equities?
Yeah, so I think from that perspective, the thing around the equity versus fixed income is more of a sort of more of an income play, but pure income play. On the equity side, what we like is the capital side as well, the capital appreciation of the share price. So we look to capture both the dividend income plus that potential return opportunity. We've seen stocks that are delivering maybe 4 or 5% dividend yield, but also you see their share price going up this year by 20, 30, 40%. So if you can get both sides of that coin, Bitcoin in a more stable environment, we think that's a great opportunity.
All right, we're in conversation with Samuel Bentley. He's the head of client portfolio managers at Eastspring Investments. Now, Samuel, you've got your eye on the region, and we have quite a few flashpoints across the region right now, notably in Indonesia and Thailand, some geopolitics to worry about. How are you reading these markets, and what's your takeaways from these issues?
Yeah, so I think there are two main ones, Indonesia and Thailand at the moment. In Indonesia, we've sort of seen recent, flashpoints domestically around some of this. The housing allowance is $3,000 a month housing allowance that created a lot of upset. Obviously, that had then knock-on effects, and the market initially, the equity markets were quite volatile. We saw some corrections, but actually since Prabowo has come in and sort of corrected some of those policies, we've actually seen the market return back to where it was before. So Indonesia's been quite stable as politically, relatively over the last couple of years. So this was a bit more of a blip, we think, and if anything, this was a buying opportunity. On the Thailand side, obviously they're in their third prime minister in 2 years. So political instability is a bit more of the norm when we come to Thailand. So we have to be a bit more careful thinking about how do we allocate into Thailand and how do we navigate that. But obviously we hope that the stability is improving. But typically, again, what we do is we think sort of medium to longer term. So we think out in a year's time, how does this market environment look? And typically things will be normalized. So is this a good time to buy into some good quality companies?
All right, Sam, talk about buying into quality companies and looking ahead to Q4. What sectors are you looking at more closely that perhaps might outperform, and which will be the places to look at?
Yeah, so our teams are from an equity perspective, our teams are quite stock specific, so they tend to look bottom up. But having said that, where we find really interesting income and dividend type opportunities, for example, over in Australia, the Australian banks, these are big, high quality, developed market, stable businesses, very cash generative, giving you 5-6% dividend yields and capital appreciation. So we like that as a nice foundation. When we think about the tech sector, we find tech stocks in Taiwan, again, some decent paying dividends or growing their dividends, but actually you can buy into some stocks there that are maybe part of the AI infrastructure, AI supply chain, but actually trading at relatively more attractive valuations than maybe some of your headline names. And even in China, and then across to Korea, we find some interesting consumer names in Korea. So Korea domestic consumption, for example, the auto sector, trading extremely interesting valuations at the moment and delivering improving dividend yields. There's a big focus in Korea on increasing shareholder value. So across the sectors, across the countries, we find plenty of opportunities.
All right, talking about opportunities, how would you structure then a diversified playbook right now, where you've got so many things going on? Would you look at growth versus value, domestic consumption versus exports, technology versus other sectors? How would you put together something for an investor?
Yeah, I think the key thing here is to be active and to be diversified. So, it's obviously there are stock specific opportunities I talked about just now that we would, as our investment team, would be actively out there looking for those stock specific opportunities on the equity side. And again, on the fixed income side, we have more domestically focused local bonds. We have US dollar bonds. So you can, obviously the currency is a big question now particularly on the fixed income side. How is the US dollar going to perform from here? The expectation or the consensus is it's going to continue to weaken. So being careful on the US dollar, maybe being sort of a little bit sort of cautious around that. But broadly speaking, being active and being diversified.
All right, we've been in conversation with Samuel Bentley. He's the head of client portfolio managers at Eastspring Investments. Samuel, thank you so much for your time and insights this morning.
Thank you.
Great having you on. Stay at Money FM 89.3.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.